Welcome to the Growth Shift. I'm David Zylstra. Here's what I've learned after years in business. Every leader who's built something meaningful has a story, but the moment they had to shift, when failure forced innovation, when change became opportunity, when they chose growth over comfort. On this show, we dive into those pivotal moments, the setbacks that became breakthroughs, the strategic shifts that accelerated growth, and the frameworks that turn obstacles into opportunities. Because here's the truth. In a world where change is the only constant, the leaders who thrive aren't the ones who avoid failure. They're the ones who've learned to shift strategically through it. So whether you're facing your own pivot point or just want to learn from someone who's been there, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. This episode is brought to you by Valentix. At Valentix, we help B2B coaches who are struggling with generating consistent, high-quality leads, automating their client onboarding processes, and scaling their operations without simply adding more hours or headcount. Most of the time, our clients come to us frustrated because they are bogged down in manual tasks and feel like they're missing out on the power of modern technology. But with the right strategy and AI-powered solutions, they're able to streamline their workflows, attract better opportunities, and achieve sustainable growth. If that sounds like you or someone you know, learn more at valentix.io. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Today on The Growth Shift, we are incredibly excited to welcome Roselyn Perez-Casiano, the founder of Insightful Lessons. Roselyn's journey is a powerful testament to personal growth and professional transformation, having transitioned from a licensed therapist with over 15 years of experience to a dynamic speaker, workshop facilitator, and one-on-one mentor. Her unique approach helps high-performing executives and business owners unlock their next level of performance by paying attention to their nervous system, leveraging neurology and NLP, and fostering self-awareness. Roselyn's insights into the profound connection between our internal states and external results, especially in leadership and communication, make her a valuable guide for our audience. Roselyn, welcome to The Growth Shift.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be part of this show.
We're excited to have you on the show. Roselyn, your path from a licensed therapist to the founder of Insightful Lessons, where you now focus on high-performance coaching for executives, is a fascinating evolution. Could you share a little bit about what initially drew you to the field of therapy and how your experiences there, particularly noticing symptoms in entrepreneurs similar to your clients, ultimately led you to pivot towards the impactful work you do today?
Absolutely. My path as a therapist started when I was in high school. I was always the go-to person with all the friends when it comes to advices, but then I really became passionate of helping people. I've always loved people. I always see the best in people, and that's what led me to become a therapist. So I received my training in Puerto Rico, and then I decided to move to the United States, which allowed me the opportunity to work with multiple populations, to include community services, mental health, medical service settings, also military, trauma, child abuse, domestic violence, you name it. And throughout all of those years, I've noticed one common denominator in all of my clients, that regarding their unique struggle, most of them lack self-awareness around the situations and the patterns that kept them coming back to those unhelpful patterns. And for me, what led me to transition as a therapist to the path where I'm at today in Insightful Essence is that I also hit that lack of awareness wall in myself, in my life. Because as a therapist, you kind of like carry this confidence in this sense that you understand people, you can spot unhealthy patterns, you can spot mental health conditions, it's easier for you to see things that people are struggling that they cannot see for themselves, until I can like face something similar in myself, in my life, in my relationship.
Sounds like you help people identify blind spots. I mean, we all have them, right? Whether we're, just an individual working a, 9-to-5 job, or whether we're, an elite entrepreneur or high-level executive. I mean, we all have our own blind spots, right? We look at ourselves based off of our own I suppose, impression or idea of who we are. I think a lot of us also don't even have a clear idea of what our true strengths are, right? It's always good to ask somebody maybe close in your network for a true opinion on yourself. But Roselyn, it sounds like you help people fundamentally just identify those blind spots. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's my gift in the world. That's my specialty. And in order for me to really develop that, I genuinely believe now that all of the struggles that I have had in my life, including that personal issue that I faced a couple of years ago, was to help me not only see it in other people, but also in myself, and to discover the role of our nervous system in every single decision, in every single standpoint or perspective that we have in life that we've normalized, and it's a little more difficult for us to see.
Maybe before we jump into the nervous system and your growth shift, or maybe the nervous system will come into play here, I'm kind of curious, right? You've worked with, just in your time as a therapist, you've worked with so many clients across many different aspects of life, right? You mentioned a good few of them there. When, there's that commonality of a blind spot that everyone has, and that's what it is that you notice being the common denominator. Do you think that there's any one or two things in particular that, cause people to have these blind spots, or is it perhaps a little more complex than that?
Yes, there's absolutely several factors to it. And as much as unfortunately, it has become a cliche how much people talk about childhood, but it does stem from childhood, right? The way that I can describe it is that every person, like our brains, are wired to survive. So the first task that our brains have is to constantly evaluate the external world and the dangers that it presents to us. And it's constantly separating life experiences between what's safe, what's not safe. And when that happens and that occurs, it happens in a moment where we don't have language developed yet. So we go through life through felt memory, felt experience. And by the time that we develop language, most of those felt memories and experiences become subconscious and becomes automatic. And we use language to normalize, to justify, to rationalize, making us unable to see those patterns that are formed in our subconscious. So it ties to our identity. So it's not only mindset, it's not only the nervous system, it's the identity that it's all become a network to make sure that we are keeping the system, like sustaining what it's safe and what it's not. So it really boils down to safety, if this makes sense.
Yeah, this is obviously where that neurosystem, ties in as well, right? It's like I suppose our inner responses to these suppressed feelings or traumas or experiences that we can't see or can't identify. Roselyn, you mentioned that you had an experience a few years ago yourself that really just reshaped how it is that you think and, how it is that you viewed, I suppose, therapy, and maybe also led to your shift into entrepreneurship in a different way as well. What happened? What happened along your journey that just opened up your eyes and reshaped your reality today?
David, you said something very important. It is the trauma, the distress that we go through life that kind of like shifts the perspective that we have in life. But unfortunately, that's not the only crucial factor. We don't have to have trauma. We don't have to have any distressful moments. Most of my clients say, I had a normal childhood. I didn't have any trauma. But that doesn't exempt people from acting and behaving and living life in a way that it stem from survival. And that's what was happening to me in my situation. Growing up, something so simple as growing up with a single mom with 5 siblings and her having to work all the time. And every time that I needed to do homework or I needed to do something, there was no adult in the house. Those moments I struggled. Bryce, you minimize those things. However, what it does, it creates and it lashes on a sense of identity that I have to do everything by myself. I have to do everything by myself. And because I didn't want her to fail in school, then I had to overwork and overstudy and overdo things, which invited also to that formation, that sense of wanting to be right, wanting to make sure that I do everything correctly, which drives perfectionism. And in my relationship, this was coming off as defensiveness. Every time that my husband and I were in the middle of an argument, I wouldn't back down. I was just like, I know better, right? For me, I was right, and being right was something that was pivotal in creating this connection in my relationship. And these are things that are so subtle, so normalized, yet they're so present in everyday's lives, and it brings so much distress and pain in people's lives because of the lack of awareness that we have around this. This is just one example of all the many things that we are constantly doing on a daily basis without even knowing.
Wow. So, I'm starting to connect some dots here as well. And maybe some of the audience, especially the entrepreneurs out there, are as well, right? Now, you're mentioning, in your situation, and I think I see what led to your growth shift here, right? You were in a position in your relationship where you had to be right because, you had to be self-reliant growing up. And that's ultimately what that formed and came to be. This experience that you had, in your marriage, in your relationship, and what you noticed, the work you did on yourself as a result as well, right? It is what led to this breakthrough now that you see in entrepreneurs, was it not?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because this is one of the things that I mostly work with entrepreneurs is you don't have to give up wanting to thrive and to achieve and to become a millionaire or billionaire, whatever your goal is. However, you don't have to do it from a source of survival because that's how most entrepreneurs are operating. They're operating from this standpoint that I have to do things. Many times for women, they don't, and probably we may be going a little more into the entrepreneurial side, not asking for help, wanting to do everything by themselves, having to leverage their business, also with their relationships. That's why many high performing women also struggle, and also men, right? But I'm talking about women because it's my particular client. But how much of them struggle in their relationships because they have too many hats and thinking that if I don't do this, then what's my worth? Because that's what subconsciously is happening, even if you cannot clearly see it.
So for yourself then, can you tell us some more about how this, this period and this, experience that you had reshaped your approach to just life and business and your mission to help others achieve their own desired next level?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because every entrepreneur, I know in my heart that every entrepreneur, they genuinely believe that they can make the world better. And that's true. That is true. It is the path that many times they get lost in. They get so caught up in like all the doings, all the tasks, all of the performance metrics, all of the numbers, which are important. However, you can be busy and enjoy every single minute of the day, or you can be very busy, constantly thinking that what's the next thing that I need to take care of, which is putting your body and your system at a state of stress and anxiety. No wonder why many people feel overwhelmed and burnt out, regardless of all of the techniques and tools that are out there.
Share a little bit more with us then. Insightful lessons. You focus on neurology, NLP. I mean, what does this really mean? How is it that you help your clients, achieve breakthroughs and, get to that point where, maybe they're more in line with themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. It's insightful essence. I thought at the beginning you cannot measure, but that's okay. Just want to kind of like to make the clarification. So the way that I help my clients is to identify first we start by expanding self-awareness. Because think about it, if you don't know that you have a spider on your back, like would you want to remove it? No, because you don't know that it's there. So it's very difficult, very hard for people to work on something that they don't know that it's even there. So what do we start with is identifying what are desires, but also what are the struggles that you have, and then help them increase their self-awareness on how are they, without knowing, perpetuating those struggles. Because everything that we have in our lives, we are co-creators. We are co-creators. If I feel that I have no time in the day, that's kind of like a perception. Let's say that, and this is something that I help my clients. Since the moment that I wake up, I constantly say, I have no time, there's so much to do. Right in that moment, your subconscious brain does not know the difference between reality or imagination. That's why we get scared when we watch horror movies. That's why we laugh or cry when we're watching comedies or drama movies, right? So increasing the self-awareness around the thoughts. What's the first thing that pops into your mind? If you would open up your eyes and you go like, I have this meeting, I have to make sure that I get off the house by 10 because if not, then I'm going to hit traffic. Right? You're putting your mind in that state without knowing your body, it's going to respond to it. But we rarely go back into the thought. We rarely go back into our bodies to make the connection and the link, how one is responding to the other. And you may still go and do everything before 10 a.m. and get to the office, but it's different if you wake up, you take a deep breath, and you just like connect to your body and say, thank you. Well, let me just go ahead and brush my teeth and just kind of like stay centered, focus in the moment. However, I know that there's so much talk about being present in the moment, but what's missing in society, in addition to just like focusing so much on mindset, is tracking those constant thoughts that are so much tied to your identity, right? Because you're coming from somewhere. What will happen if you don't make it to that meeting? Then it's gonna be chaos. So what will happen if chaos happens? Then I'm just gonna lose that deal or that opportunity. And what will happen, right, if we continue? And this is how I drive my clients. And oftentimes there are 5 wounds: unworthiness, rejection, humiliation, betrayal, and abandonment, that are tied to that identity, that it's making them succeed and to achieve amazing things in life at the expense of their well-being. Was this helpful?
Yeah, so it sounds like it's almost like what you do working with clients is you come in and you help them identify first and foremost thoughts that they're having. But then you make the connection between those thoughts and their own physical and perhaps emotional response to those thoughts. And also perhaps adding another layer, the source of those thoughts, those fears, those concerns, and more, to have control over them, to find those weaknesses, get rid of them, and just allow themselves, or perhaps even give themselves permission to move past those things.
Absolutely. You nailed it. Yeah.
Could you share a story with us of, your work in motion, and, perhaps how it is you actually came in and helped a business owner overcome some of these things and achieve their next level of growth?
Absolutely. There was one client that came to work with me because of personal relationship problems, right? Many times the personal relationships are kind of like the conduit to help us to look into really what are other things that we're doing in our regular day-to-day lives. So this person came to me because of personal relationship issues with their children. And when we continued just to dive, this person was taking so much responsibility of everyone's emotions, not only the children, but also the business, also everything, absolutely everything, because it gave that client sense of control, to the point that it was reflected, like how it reflected in her business. She was not finding help or assist or getting people to help her, because what if they're not, right? I want to make sure that whoever I hire, it's a good fit, and this is my baby. I just don't want to kind of like rely responsibility, and those all the things that are really disguises that grants a person the sense of control, sense of like, I have accomplished, that everything lies on me, I am needed. And it's deeper, right? I'm using this as an example, but once we can like dived into the root of things, everything else started to flow much easier. The relationships, she was able to hire an assistant that led her to actually grow her business and increase the income and the productivity in the business, because then she was able to focus on other things. And even though we have heard this so much, I'm telling you, it's still very much present, because rarely the person and people don't do the work from their skin, from their nervous system, from the emotional standpoint, which is ultimately what it's leading behaviors. Because a person can become so good at achieving, managing money, growing a company, and who knows, probably that is coming from a survival standpoint, right? So it's helping in this way. But at some point in your life, if you feel like there's something missing, there's something that it's not enough, or I'm having issues here even though that I'm successful here, then we have to look at the bigger picture. So that was a success story, and she was able to kind of like really balance and create a balance with all of these areas in her life.
Yeah, and it seems like it makes a lot of sense, right? We need to focus on what's going in internally, because that is what is going to impact our external state, right? But with what you do, Roselyn, it's not usual or conventional for a business coach to take this sort of approach. Much needed, yes, and very important, but not the typical approach that people might seek out looking for help with their businesses. Right now, I speak with a lot of coaches and consultants, and many times people have a very unique, very impactful approach to working with their clients and achieving breakthroughs. But there's a few challenges, major challenges, that professionals and entrepreneurs in your situation are up against. Right? There's a lot of noise in today's market. There's a lot out there, and generally when people are looking for a business coach or to grow themselves, and as a byproduct hopefully their businesses as well, they generally seek out things like help with sales or help with marketing, and just a general business coach who can help them with the internal workings and operations and such. So I'd love to hear from you. I mean, with the challenges that many coaches such as yourself are up against right now, whether it's cutting through the market noise and standing out and actually connecting with people who can understand your value proposition for unique or less conventional services like yours, what are your thoughts around these challenges? And what do you observe in the market today for coaches in a similar position to yourself?
So, as I said earlier, I have the gift to see beyond. And once again, it's not that everyone needs my services. People have to want these services, because at the end, it's all about how are you enjoying and going through life as far as a lifestyle, as a business owner, right? Is sales necessary? Of course. Is strategy important? Absolutely. Is marketing? All of those things are extremely important. Many times, and the people that I mostly that I work with, they have accomplished these and they are good at identifying. But then it gets them to a point where they go like, what's next? What's missing? And that's kind of like the top place that you can be as a successful high achiever entrepreneur. But many times people focus on what you were mentioning because perhaps they haven't gotten to that experience and sense that I have achieved everything, but they haven't gone to the now what part, right? So there are different stages. There are people that probably at the beginning stages that may see my work, I'm like, I don't need it. I really need a sales, and probably they're right, and that's okay. That's what I never say, that you need my services. It's about building businesses with purpose, with a sense of meaning, with matter, because that's what happened to me. And even though I was a successful therapist, I understood people, I was really good with my clients, I had my own moments where I'm like, now what? Like, what's the purpose, right? I was in the middle of like my doctorate degree and I'm like, is this it? Is this really what I need, right? And there are different stages. So it's a matter of identifying where are you as an entrepreneur, as a business person? What is it that you want? I know for me that I wanted to build a business with purpose, right? That I wake up every day and I can say, love, I feel that I am doing something that makes me passionate and excited about. Working with that passion, with that sense of purpose, that you're impacting the world, right? And even more with AI, which I can foresee that the AI is going to make our lives easier when it comes to strategy, sales, marketing, all of that. But then it's going to leave us with this bigger hole, right? Because now that we have something that helps us so much, now what can I do as a human? So for me, I'm really passionate about my work for entrepreneurs that share this vision, then they can see the value of this type of work.
So purpose and mission, direction, what people actually want. So you work with business owners who have achieved success in many other ways and forms, and they're at, I suppose, maybe a glass ceiling that they can't see and they can't break through and they don't know how, but it's by unlocking those deeper levels within themselves that they can align and perhaps find a greater purpose, greater vision, or just a deeper mission, we could say as well. With your approach and the type of clients that you work with, you don't want to work with everybody, right? There's few people who could
absolutely
actually value and use
David,
your service.
I have had clients that say whenever they receive achievements, they say like in their minds, now what? Like, another one. That's where they're at. Or they say like they didn't get time to celebrate, right? They just like go from one thing to another. But it's because of what's happening at the stores that hasn't been looked at, which is easier said than done, but it requires courage to really connect with your body, because the more disconnected that we become with our bodies, the scarier it becomes to manage and go through our emotions. So that's why there's so much mindset work, but not that much nervous system integration with emotions in alignment.
For perhaps the sake of the audience who might be in a position where they're thinking, yeah, there's only a small portion of the population that I really want to work with because of what it is I do and who I can truly help. What sort of actionable strategies are you prioritizing right now at Insightful Essence to connect with the right people who are in a position where they need your work and they need your services?
Absolutely. I definitely have been building a purpose-driven business. So I always want to make sure that I am speaking to the clients from the heart. I'm being genuine and authentic. And that, believe it or not, requires for me to connect with myself different ways, so that it's part of my strategy for me to having a morning routine where I wake up and I meditate and I get grounded, and it helps me so much with my creativity. It helps me so much with my intuition, which is what I use to pour into my clients, and it has helped me be featured in Forbes and Time magazine, and also to do a TED talk, because I am connected with what I feel and it speaks directly to the client. So I would say that it's the foundation, because everything else becomes so much easier, right? The strategy, the automation, having business systems in place, which makes it easier, right? Like the content creation, because I'm a content creator. I have my VA that helps me kind of like brainstorm like what's working, what's not working, and we go from there. So it's a constant evaluation of what's working, what's not working, because in my mind it can make a lot of sense, but perhaps that may not be speaking to my clients. We always, even though I'm talking and speaking from the heart, I want to make sure that the message has been delivered. So every 3 months we evaluate what's working, what's not working, what have proven results. If something doesn't work, is being okay, like in your own skin, to say, okay, even though I was passionate about this, it hasn't had that much response. So it's all about the clients. It's all about providing value, and how can you help yourself to pivot and shift if needed be.
So, Roselyn, there's a big focus here for you on, personal alignment, right? And creating value and staying consistent, staying true to yourself and working through challenges. So it sounds like a lot of the work that you're doing is focused internally. Right now, I think there's an interesting thing I want to talk about when it comes to how that relates to AI and to technology as well, right? Because here it is that you're focused on personal alignment, on relationships, on understanding oneself. Surely that seems like it's completely on the other side of the spectrum when we start looking at AI and technology, right? Because a lot of people are trying to use AI to get more work off their plate, to replace positions or replace employees as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts on, with your approach to personal alignment, understanding yourself and having helping your clients through that as well. How is it that you're thinking about AI and how it can start actually fitting in to help with your approach rather than perhaps starting to impact such a personal type of business?
I love your question, and I love using AI. I use AI in many different ways, and always exploring what other programs and apps are available and ways for me to integrate it into my process. I was even looking into quantum computing, but we're not there yet. So that being said, think about it this way. Before I can jump into AI, I like to use examples. Have you ever gotten to a room where it feels so peaceful, right? There's someone that you talk to and you feel so easy, and you're like, oh, I don't know what is it about you that feels so easy to talk to? Or vice versa. There have been rooms that you feel and you don't know you enter and you go I don't know what's happening, but I'm not even going to say a word, because you can cut the tension with decisions, right? AI doesn't do that. You can walk into a room with your computer and you're not going to get that feeling. And there's a reason for that. We have mirror neurons. We're emotions, and humans, we have a vibration. We have energy, and this is science. This is not manifestation, and it's not that I don't believe it or I do believe it. I don't want to get into that because that's a different topic, but I just want to use it as an example. AI, it's not there yet, or who knows if it will ever be. So whenever I use AI, I use it as a tool, but it doesn't dictate what I say or what I do, which is something that I've been seeing a lot of creators and a lot of people do, and completely fully trust what AI says. And this is something that I did the other day. It's so funny, because typically when I ask AI's help on identifying what may be titles that I can use for YouTube or content creator, I never give it the title, even if I have something in mind. I ask, can you give me 5 to 10 examples, just to see what AI come up with, right? Because I know that it uses the internet and the information and what's trending. And as I read through it, there's one that I always identify which one resonates with me, and that I get that feeling that, wow, this caught my attention, right? That's the human piece within ourselves. And sometimes AI recommends a different one. So what I do is I ask AI, okay, I felt that this one resonated with me because of this. Why did you recommend this particular one? And then AI response goes oh yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Yours is better because okay, right? So just know that about AI. I'm sharing this because yes, it's an amazing tool, but it's still a tool. And if as a business, who do you want your product to be bought or your service to be bought? From people. And dismissing that, it's one of the crucial mistakes that any entrepreneur or business person could ever do.
So your focus, right? Neurology, focusing on NLP as well and just the inner workings of people's nervous systems and their minds. From your perspective, how do you see AI influencing the nervous system and emotional intelligence of leaders and teams?
I don't necessarily completely dismiss AI as a tool that cannot be used to help nervous system, to help regulation, to help, because let's say if I'm a person, right, who may not necessarily be surrounded by people that I can trust, because that's one of the things, that safety, we can never forget that our brains, we're creatures that our brains are constantly, regardless of how smart we are, survival always goes first. And if I've never opened up to anyone, never, ever, ever in my life, then it's going to feel terrifying for me just to go and ask for help, right? Let's use that as an example. So as a business leader, entrepreneur, it could be extremely helpful to get information. And it could be to get tools that we can slightly start to implement. But at some point, there's nothing, absolutely nothing that compares to human connection, because we're social creatures. We are biologically wired to be social. And it's very different to talk to a system or a computer, right, than talking to a person. That's one point. But another point is that AI will always adjust to your perspective on what is it that you're integrating as a prompt. So it could also be limited by your own lack of awareness, right? If in my situation with my relationship, if I didn't have the lack of awareness, how am I going to write the prompt to AI? I will use my perspective, right? And I'm going to justify it. So AI will respond accordingly to that. But it's very different to have someone that can see beyond that and say, it sounds like you are constantly taking all of the responsibility, right? But what about this? What about that area? So having experts and people that have gone through the process, that are mentors, that are coaches, that are equipped, right, to see that it's completely different. I've seen with leaders whenever we work around communication.
So, Roselyn, you've gone through a significant amount of change yourself. You've managed that change. You've identified the stressors that come with it. And that's what you help your clients with ultimately as well, right? Managing their nervous systems, managing change, managing chaos, right? Now, AI and technology can bring a lot of stress with the changing times, especially within business owners. How do I use it? When do I use it? What will my employees think? How's it going to impact my business? What if I don't want to use it? A lot of stress, needless to say. Drawing from neurology or nervous system regulation, do you have any sort of specific strategies or advice that leaders can use to navigate perhaps the stress and uncertainty introduced by AI?
Absolutely. There's nothing that can create more uncertainty in a human being and leaders and business owners than lack of information. So give yourself an opportunity and learn about AI. Learn about AI, try it, explore it, listen to podcasts, get familiar with it, because once you have information, then it becomes your choice whether if you want to integrate it or not, but at least you're making an informed decision, because the worst feeling that humans can have is uncertainty. And if you don't have the information, right, and you have an idea, know that it's coming from fear. It's coming from not something that is materialized on specific information. So I would say to open up and at least learn about it. It doesn't hurt to get information. And who knows if you might end up loving it like I do, right? And the reality is, whether we like it or not, it's not going anywhere. And if you learn about it, you will see that it's growing so fast, and it is advancing so fast that, intellectually speaking, it's something unprecedented. Sometimes we don't like things, or we're not open to it, and we choose not to learn about it to protect ourselves and our state. But that's also you putting yourself out of the game, right? And being in a disadvantaged position by not allowing yourself to learn about it and to see how it could be helpful for you and to grow your business, because it's everywhere and it's not going anywhere.
Trying to make decisions or take action with lack of information is one sure way to lead to chaos and stress.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Roselyn, your insights into personal transformation, leadership, and the power of emotional and neurological awareness are very impactful. To conclude, based on your philosophy of, connecting mindset, strategy, and the nervous system, what's the single most important piece of advice that you'd offer to our audience who are striving to unlock their own next level of performance and build resilient, high-performing teams?
It's very simple, yet so powerful, and it's be on the present, really being on the present and getting to know yourself. There's nothing that can help you to explore yourself in a way that you have never allowed yourself before. Something that I did something very scary in my own personal journey, and is to ask people that I loved and that I trust what were things that they didn't like about me that much. Right? And I gave myself the opportunity to put myself in that position. It was so horrible listening to what they were saying, but I did that intentionally to observe what would my body do. And at some point I just kept thinking, like, and it was my sister, I was about to say, okay, you can stop, I don't want to listen anymore, right? That's kind of like what I wanted to say and throw at her. Yet it granted me so much information. It's not necessarily that you're going to like go blindly and believe everything that everybody perceives you about, but there's still valuable information, and even more, the person loves you. So being present, knowing yourself, and really celebrating and enjoying life, because life is beautiful, and sometimes we wait for great things to happen or goals to happen, and we miss the point where we're not focusing on the beauty in the journey. So that would be
Roselyn,
it.
thank you so much for sharing your story and your insights with the audience today. For anyone listening who might like to connect with you or to learn more about what you're doing with Insightful Essence, what would be the best way to find you online?
Absolutely. You can go to my website, insightfulessence.com. Also, I have a podcast where I speak to high performing and high achieving women who want more than just success, and it's called Insightful Success. And also, you can find me in my Insightful Success Facebook group to be part of a community where I'm constantly sharing insights such as the one that I shared in this show.
Excellent. Thanks again for joining us today on The Growth Shift.
Thank you for having me, David. This was great.
And that's a wrap on another episode of The Growth Shift. If this conversation sparked something for you, whether it's a new perspective on failure, a strategy you want to try, or just the reminder that every setback can become a setup for something bigger, hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, the leaders who thrive aren't the ones who avoid change. They're the ones who shift strategically through it. If you're ready to build the systems that help you grow without the chaos, head over to valentix.io. We help businesses like yours scale smarter, not harder. I'm David Zylstra, and I'll see you in the next shift.